Hey everyone, and welcome to today's webinar about how to bridge the gap between design and development with Frontify. My name is Rahul, and I'm working here as a Product Marketing Manager, and I'm super happy to walk you through today's demo today with my lovely colleague Simone.
Hi, I'm Simone, and I am a product designer here at Frontify. And together, hopefully, we'll answer a few of your questions about the Inspect tool.
So let's deep dive into today's agenda. We're going to talk about some challenges you might be facing as a designer at the beginning. Then we will talk about Frontify, who we are, what we do, and what modules our platform consists of. Then we will walk you through a little demo showing you how you actually can bridge the gap between design and development with Frontify. Then we have some time for your questions. So feel free to shoot over all the questions which pop up during the course of the webinar, and we'll be happy to answer them at the end. And then there's a little outlook. And in about 25-30 minutes, I think we'll be finished.
Yep. Let's see how it goes. All right, so let's dive into the challenges of a designer. Of course, as you know, because you're watching this webinar, there are a lot of challenges that we're facing in a more digitized world, especially with design and the handover process. We have a few points that we'd like to discuss today. Obviously, there's a lot more challenges that we feel there could be, but I think it's worth discussing a few that our tool could specifically help to solve. The first one is the global cross-team collaboration. With this ever digitized world, you find that a lot more people are working remotely, and there are a lot more challenges with the handover of finished design assets from particularly designer to developer. For example, I would design something in Sketch and I would have to write a handover briefing or to specify in my Sketch file what exactly was the final design, or what to do here, what the transition was, all of these particular details. And this is particularly challenging when handing it over to a developer that may not have worked with you in the past or may not know what you mean by certain things. I feel like there is a big chance of a loss of information. That's just one of the challenges when you do have so much space between you. We do really try to solve that issue by putting everything in one place and creating a single source of truth, which is really handy in times of remote work or teams being distributed across a wide area. Another issue that us designers and developers come across is that the time for turnaround is speeding up. We do find that often there is a lack of time, especially in my past job. I was always scrambling for time and trying to find ways to improve my efficiency and minimize the handover time between developers, account managers, all of the people involved in a creative team. Generally speaking, when you are speeding up your design efforts, there is a chance for miscommunication and friction between teams, which is a third point we want to touch on today. If you are working at an increased pace and you are trying to finish multitudes of assets in a short time frame, or you're just working on large projects, there is a chance that things could go wrong. That's totally understandable, but we're trying to minimize that. So we are creating a place where you can have all of your designs in one place, and you can have a record of the different versions and the assets that do need to be handed over to the next stage. Here you can see a few more different design challenges between the designer world and the developer world. You'll probably see between both of these infographics that there is a similarity between the challenges. For example, often there's changes, there's difficulties in the communication, as I touched on before, and it's hard to maintain that brand consistency if it does go through to a lot of different touch points, particularly across different teams.
Yeah, exactly. And for this very purpose, we will show you the inspect mode later on. But before we do that, let us give you some insights about who we are and what we do. So with Frontify, we were founded in 2013. We're a Swiss company placed in St. Gallen, which is in the eastern part of Switzerland, but we also have offices in German Frankfurt and in New York. And currently we are around 125 employees with a growing tendency.
Always.
Just having gone through another Series B funding. Yeah, and we all work together with this following vision in mind. So what we actually try to do is to create the best and most user-friendly brand management platform where all of our users can create and deliver compelling and consistent brand experiences. And to do so, we have like 3 modules in place: guidelines, libraries, and projects. And I guess it makes most sense if we deep dive into the demo at this point and show them these components from within the app.
Yep, let's go. So here we have an overview of what Rahul just touched on. We have the guidelines, the projects, and the libraries. They're up here. This is in a brand level already. So if you did have multiple brands, you could showcase them all in one higher level. But let's deep dive back in. So as Rahul mentioned, we have the guidelines, we have projects, which is where you'll find inspect mode, and we also have the libraries. So within guidelines, this is where you create your guidelines, and there's a front-facing view, which we'll touch on later. So we'll get back to that. In the libraries, we have all of the assets that we wish to store. So you can't necessarily work on these assets, it's more you store them in this area. So in our example libraries overview, we have documents, we have the icons library, we have a logo library, and media examples. So as you would expect, in a lower level, when you click into the media library, you can see collections, you can see folders with the different assets, the different statuses, and you can see the assets. And the important thing to tie back from the libraries into the projects is that you can use libraries to design within your workspace, which is here, and you can also finalize your assets in this particular view and then move them into the libraries. So what I mean by that is that the workspace is generally a work in progress folder. That's where you store your working files, for example. In this case, the example today will be on a sketch file. So here, if we take a deeper dive, so this is a work in progress asset. And you can see here that there are a few different elements to this design. This is an artboard of the sketch file. And if you see here on the left, when we go down the power bar, we do have inspect mode here. So when you click onto that, you'll see that there is a slightly different view to what you saw before, but there's a lot more detail about this asset, which is part of the challenges that we mentioned before. There could be loss of communication, as I said, or there could be time restraints with the project. And this tool really aims to help to minimize these problems and by creating that single source of truth. So when we want to inspect an asset during our handover process, you'll see that a designer could upload this asset and then hand it over to the developer for feedback or for the next steps. So to get all of that information without having to actually re-enter the sketch file, you can just inspect. So here on the left, you can see all of the different layers that are being used within this particular asset, and it depends on how you layer it. So it really depends on how you build this particular sketch asset as to how the folder structure is constructed, which is really handy in itself, because there straight away you've got organization and order, which may not necessarily translate if you just hand over a file. In the middle, of course, we have the asset. I'll get back to that in a moment after I talk about the right side. So this here is the artboard overview. So you can actually see all of the details of what is actually contained in this artboard. You have values such as the height and the width of the particular artboard, but then when you click on a particular part of the artboard, for example, this vector graphic, you will actually see that there are different values attributed to every individual component within this design. So for example, if I click on this call to action, you can see that there's a background color that has been defined. We also have the border radius of this particular button, the opacity of the color, and then if we actually click on the font, it shows as well. So this overview is incredibly informative just for that particular feature. But when we click out of the asset, here you can also see in the audit function what particular colors in your style guide, which we briefly touched on, are present in this design. So here you can see that there may be a few colors that aren't in the style guide or your brand guidelines, which may or may not be intentional. And here you can quickly audit and fix if you need to, and quality check. So this we find is a really handy tool to quickly check back with your brand consistency and to make sure that everything's aligned. And finally, I think another really cool feature in here is that you can quickly export all of the assets that you see today. So if I click out of this particular asset and click into this tab, you'll see that you can download the whole artboard for showing externally, or you can export the particular for example, in this case, bitmap or other particular exportables, which you can define as well in Sketch. So there's really a lot of capabilities in this feature. It does succinctly show everything at once, which is easy to digest information, which is what we want. And it also hopefully speeds up the process for you, because here, for example, we have code ready to integrate straight away. So it does really speed up that process. No more opening, closing files if you don't need to. You might be wondering how you give feedback. I just want to quickly touch on that as well. When you have viewed over this asset and you think, maybe there's something else we need to comment on, you can actually write some feedback directly onto the asset and then send it back for another round of iteration, depending on how you and your team are working. Another handy feature that goes hand in hand with all of this is the prototyping tool. So when you want to show maybe a little bit more to the developers for handoff, or to someone a bit higher up, you can always create a click-through of your designs that maybe translates the information you're trying to portray a bit easier. So in conclusion, that's more or less the inspect tool. So you have it easily accessible information for all parties that are involved.
Perfect. Maybe just to quickly go back to this overview, which I was touching upon before. Like as you might have seen, the inspect mode might be the very core of design to development when working with Frontify. But obviously, you can also use like all the other modules to help enhancing this process. So if you have, for example, your brand guidelines defined in the cloud, your designers can use them and have them attend during the design process. making sure they're brand consistent, and also your developers can use them if they're not sure about a particular use of it. Then the libraries, obviously you have like all your media assets, like images, videos, icons, logos, attend, which you can directly incorporate into the design process as well. The pattern library, for example, really helps to speeden up the translation process of a design concept for developers, where they can store and reuse UI patterns. And yeah, that's like all these different, as you can see, there are like the different modules touch on different parts of the design to development process. And I guess that's already it of our live demo, I guess, right?
More or less everything that we've talked about.
Yeah. So this would have been a demo. Maybe to sum up what you've just seen, we've rolled out the inspect mode already, and some customers are using it already. This quote, for example, is from Episerver, a customer of ours, and they just to summarize this little quote, they say that the inspect mode really helps them to communicate more clearly and also to uphold brand consistency, which is like the very core of what we at Frontify try to do, right?
All right, now I think we have some time for questions. We'll try to get through as many as we can in our time frame. Let's just have a quick look. Okay, what's the first one?
Okay, there's a question, if Frontify integrates with our design tools. Yeah, maybe I'm taking over this question. Okay. Yes, we do have a couple of integrations with design tools. We have integrations with Sketch, Adobe XD, InDesign, and some more like Figma.
It's coming soon.
Yeah, to come. Our integrations work in two ways. For example, in Sketch, you have the possibility to retrieve all the brand guidelines and images, assets, which you've defined in Frontify from within Sketch. But then you also have the way you also can use the Frontify as your design files home, meaning that you can automatically sync Sketch RPod updates to Frontify with the plugin. And then for other integrations like Adobe XD, you just they just work towards the design tool, meaning that you can just connect your Frontify environment to the design tool and then have all your brand collaterals and guidelines and definitions at hand when you're in design process.
All right. Nice. Okay, next question. Is Frontify made for big enterprises only? And can I use it if I'm a smaller company or freelancer as well? And the answer is yes, anyone can use it. We have plans that are catered to absolutely any company size, including those individuals out there that like to freelance or work alone. We will say that there are enterprise-only plans catered to the bigger companies because they do have higher storage requirements or capability requirements, and it is a bit more customized. In the smaller sizes, for example, you can as well customize if you want. But generally speaking, the functionality does stay the same for no matter what size the company is. And inspect mode is available as long as you have the projects enabled. So when you have the workspace, then you can inspect.
Yeah, really supporting our vision of enabling everyone to create compelling stories, right?
Yep.
All right.
Maybe we have time for one more.
Yeah, let's do one more, and then maybe just we'll answer all the remaining questions via email. So don't worry if your question is not covered yet. Yeah, maybe one last question. Okay, the question is, and Simone touched upon this part already, if it's possible to have multiple brands or sub-brands in Frontify. For example, if you work as an agency and have different clients in place, that's totally possible. We have the brand tab, which is on top of your whole Frontify platform, and depending on your plan, you can have countless brands,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
So you can build as much as you want, which is particularly handy with freelancers, as I touched on as well, because you might work across many brands and want to have access to them all in one place. It's really handy.
Yeah.
Yep. That's all we have time for questions, but we have some more information.
Yeah. This is obviously not the only webinar we've done in Frontify history. There are some more, for example, the introduction to Frontify, which would be targeted to people who are totally new to Frontify, where you get an overview of all our modules and how they work in it to a more detailed extent. You'll find all our webinars on our website. There's also a webinar on BAM versus DAM. We call it BAM. BAM, it stands for brand asset management, which is kind of the area we want to touch. So we want to take DAM a little further in the future, exactly. And if you're more hands-on, feel free to reach out to us and we can set you up with a trial environment where you can test all the things we've described and showcased today.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining. We hope we clarified a few things for you. Again, if you still have some more questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them. But we are sending out an email answering the rest of them, so get in your questions quickly. Until then, have a great rest of the week and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for watching the webinar. See you soon.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.